what I was suggesting is going on there. Like I don't know how helpful dealing with all the stuff that you're typing in there is going to be to like just getting to the core of this problem. So, just what is the main proposition here that you are um that you're feeling like tension over? That like you're worried you're a hypocrite or something like that?
Yeah, well, it's pretty much the idea that, like, if we look at, like, in human to human interactions, like, the only way to truly, like, atone or, like, be sorry or apologize is to change a behavior, and, um, I like, if I am continuing to, like, kill, then I really can never atone for that, like, killing.
Well, I mean, it's going to depend how you think about the term atone, but I mean, I don't know if thinking about it in those terms is even that helpful. Like, is atonement the important thing?
Maybe not, I don't know. I mean, people seem to value it, like, superficially at least.
I think it would be more helpful to just directly talk in terms of doing something morally wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we confuse ourselves when we start putting layers of abstraction in front of that, like with like the Israel debates and stuff recently, all these terms like genocide and open air prison and all that. It's like that's just adding like needless confusion to a conversation. Like it's better to just talk about what the moral problem is supposed to be. So what do you think the moral problem is?
The moral problem is that on like, my conception of anti-speciesism is that all organisms with brains, until there is more biological information that demonstrates that or that provides evidence that they lack consciousness, they should be treated as equal, and I am an organism, I have a brain, and I can't come up with a reason that my my metabolizing brain is worth more than the individual's, insects and the very occasional small mammal that would die by my daily
O-
activities.
Okay, well maybe we can like break down the parts of it, right? So the first part it sounds like you have confusion about your value relative to animals. So basically, I'll give you the whole kind of like path that we're going to end up on here. It's going to be like, firstly, just unwinding that. Like, it's very obvious that humans have massively more value than insects. It's like, and it's actually not even clear for many insects they have value at all. So, like, well, the first thing will be unwinding that. But then once that's unwound, then there's this further empirical problem of even in the cases where we think like, oh, hey, we're like killing insects here or we're killing animals here, whatever it is, it's not clear that there would be less death or suffering, whichever you're concerned with. It's true for both. In the case that we didn't do the action, right? Like when you compare like a cubic mile of farmland to a cubic like cropland to a cubic mile of wildland, is there reason to think that there's more death in one than the other? I mean, I don't see any reason to think that, right? So there's going to be those two layers there. Firstly, just getting clarity on who has the value. And then secondly, and the second reason would actually be enough independently, even if you thought that there was like human level consciousness out there in like rodents or something. The second point is just going to be about the empirics, just not actually having a reason to think that your action is causing things to be any worse than non-action. So,
Okay.
firstly, I assume that you do think value is a function of complexity of conscious experience. You're just confused about which beings have which kinds of conscious experiences, right? Or are you actually not sure that value has to do with the kind of experience a being has?
No, I think it is identical to consciousness, which I think is in turn identical to, like, metabolizing brains.
Well, let's be really clear. We don't think value is identical to consciousness, right? you might think what you value is proportional to the complexity of a being's consciousness, but consciousness we're talking about like, the subjective experience you have. Value we're talking about like your preferences, right? When you say I value something, you can't like swap that with like I conscious experience something. It's like value is a specific thing, right? Value is not the same thing as like hearing or something like that, which is a conscious
Mhm.
experience, right? So value, let's think of that as like, if I say I value being kind to others, I'm saying that I desire for there to be kindness towards others, for myself to be kind to others, for others to be kind to each other. I'm saying that I have a kind of preference for that. Does that sound reasonable enough to you, or does that sound like it's not capturing what you mean when you say value?
No, that's exactly, that is, like, whenever I say my set of values, it would be like, "Oh, I do not want to abuse others, I want to show others kindness, as a superrogative." Um, that would be yeah, that would be exactly what you mean by value. So up to this point, I've been treating moral value as distinct from, like, values in the sense of, like, what my goals are in terms of interacting with, uh, what I perceive to be other conscious beings.
Well, I mean, it might make sense to split off moral value from value generally, just so you don't get things like, I morally value like eating a bowl of Lucky Charms, right? If you say values like totally the same thing as, or if you say preference and moral value are identical, some people prefer that. I don't personally care about this. I'm fine saying I morally value eating Lucky Charms. It really doesn't matter to me. But if you want, you can cordon off a moral value as like a certain kind of value, but value broadly, we're just talking about the preferences we have, right? Like maybe you'll find a way to say moral value is a specific subset of that, but values broadly are the things we have preferences, are our preferences for things. Yes?
Yes, I mean, let me think about this for a second. Yes, I think on an individual, like, on my individual level, that's true.
Well, I'm just saying it's what we mean by value. Like if I
Yeah.
say I value eating Lucky Charms in the morning, I don't see how that's different than saying I have a preference for eating Lucky Charms in the morning, right? Maybe there's particularly strong values or values that we'd be willing to like impose on others and stuff like that. Maybe we'll call those like moral values, but just value generally. I think we can just say we're talking about our preferences. Yo, Venus, you're hot micing a bit over there.
My bad. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah,
think so, yeah.
okay, all right. And do you agree that you're going to value a being proportionally to the kind of conscious experience it has, like the kind of complexity of that experience? For instance, if there's a being that has no experience except for just perceiving the color black or something like that, versus a being that experiences like love and like transcendental bliss and like deep abiding inner happiness, like surely you place higher value on the second kind of experience than the first one, right?
Like, I want to, I just can't come up with a biological
No, no,
reason.
no, that's skipping to the next question.
Okay.
Right now I'm just trying to get us in, before talking about biology, because Avi's here. I'll let Avi talk to you about that, but before talking about the biology, um I'm just trying to say, just in principle, say we have two experiences like that. This is like a thought
Mhm.
experiment. This is just philosophy right now. We're not talking about the biology. You agree if we just have those two experiences, surely you care more about the one that has like all the love and that kind of stuff than the one that just is an experience of seeing the color black forever, right?
Yeah, I think it'd be specifically, like, the capacity to, like, suffer, as I think it was John Stuart Mill, or Jeremy Bentham, I can't remember which one, um, laid out, and also, like, I would say I also value in others, like, the ability to show compassion, like, to
Sure.
improve,
Yeah.
like, the experience of others.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to be super precise about it. We can say that there's things that we care about, like ability to suffer, ability to experience well-being, right? We can say that suffering's not part of the picture. Say we just have beings that experience well-being. One of them experiences well-being equivalent to like having a sip of Coke. The other experiences well-being equivalent to like understand the kind of well-being you have when you understand like deep scientific truths about the world, or like, have like a experience of like intimate love with someone. Like even if we s- get the suffering totally out of the picture, we can even just in cases where the only thing to consider is degrees of positive experience, we can tell we care about that too. I'm not saying not to care about the suffering, obviously we care about that, but sort of saying there might be a range of things you care about, and we don't need to be specific or figure out exactly what all of those are. We just understand that there's conscious experiences, and they have like, a range of different qualities to them. They have suffering, they have well-being, they have states of like compassion for others, all these kind of things.
Hmm.
And as you like scale up the presence of those kind of features in some conscious system, you're going to care increasingly about that system, right?
Yeah, like I would agree with that. Specifically as we talk about like, I mean, I guess we don't have to be super specific, but like the idea of like a preference to continue living and avoid
Hmm.
like death.
Yeah, sure. That can also be part of the picture. Ability to suffer, ability to experience well-being, having preferences about continuing to exist, having compassion for others. Like these are all things that you're going to value when a being has them, right? So like the more of those things that we add and the greater the degree to which they are present, the more valuable that being is going to be.
Sure, yeah, I would agree with that.
Okay, Avi, do you want to help unwind what is it? Biochemical vegan, biomechanical vegan? I forget.
Yeah, biochemical, yeah.
Biochemical vegan. Do you want to help with the unwinding of the biological confusion here? He doesn't see a reason to think that like insect conscious states are like meaningfully different from humans and stuff like that.
Oh God.
Well,
What?
I know, but at the same time, it's like, he is like a committed vegan. He like cares about this stuff. I sometimes will just take the time to
Well,
like
I mean, look, I mean, I
unwind
think
this stuff.
what's to be unwound then is just what is the process by which this individual is inferring a meaningful experience of sentience and degrees of meaningful experience, if not things like certain aspects of the brain or behaviors or certain things like that. Because on both of those things, I don't see how one would get to the conclusion that there's no meaningful difference in the sort of sentient experience that a human and an ant has.
So I agree like on the it's seemingly from a behavioral perspective that like, you know, great apes like ourselves have a very display far greater range of behaviors that's, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that like because there's people like the behaviorist concept because they're like drugs that will knock you on your and look like you're doing nothing, but
Yeah,
like
that's
internally there's
entailment. So none of these things are entailment. They're just probability raising features of one hypothesis over another. The point I'm just making is that there are certain probability raising features, there are certain observations that are more consistent on one hypothesis than the other. And if not, if you don't accept that aspects of neuroanatomy, aspects of neurophysiology uh, are more expected on the hypothesis. The observations we have about the brains of humans versus the brains of insects are more expected on the hypothesis that humans are more have a more rich degree of sentience than insects. And if you don't accept the behavioral differences as more expected on the hypothesis that humans have a more rich experience than insects, then I don't know. First of all, if we have just a widely different epistemology, um,
Mhm.
uh, but also I wouldn't know how you may I don't know if in any way you're making inferences about different degrees of sentience at all. Um,
So, I'm
You're
not
the-
making an inference. I'm just assuming that
Do you think there's
until
any way to make the inference?
yeah,
Because
by
here's
solving the hard problem of consciousness.
yeah, because this is the thing, like Isaac. This is why I don't think the conversation should be pushed to me, because it is still philosophy. Because like there's no point of me going through the neuroanatomy with this person because there's nothing he's going to accept about any of the neuroanatomy or any of the behaviors because he seems
Well,
more
not
like a solipsist.
necessarily. If I can accept, like, there can be a probabilistic, uh
That's what I just said, evidence, right?
yeah,
Like, but then you replied by saying so you need that what I would accept is solving the hard problem of consciousness, right?
that would give me certainty, but it
Well,
wouldn't I can
wait. This whole conversation was not asking about certainty. This whole conversation was talking about credences. We're talking about evidence, more expected on one hypothesis than the other.
okay. So
Okay.
what is the evidence that makes it more likely
Mhm.
that that more likely that, human beings
Mhm.
and, uh, have
Yeah, I just provided two examples. So it's the observations of behavior that we observe
okay,
between ants and great apes, and especially humans. That's one. That's more expected on the hypothesis that there's a more rich experience in humans than ants. And then there's the neuroanatomy, the complexity of the neuroanatomy, the different functions, the different relay systems, the um, increase in surface area for gyri and sulci to increase the amount of processing, um, increase the different centers of the brain that humans have that ants just don't. The neuron count, the synapse count, whatever correlate you want, it's there between humans and insects. So that's another probability raising feature.
so do you think that the science more supports, like a spectrum of
Yeah.
consciousness?
Yes. There's discrete different types of consciousness, like qualitatively different types of consciousness, and within those there's like spectrums. Sure.
Okay. Um, so there is some credence in your perspective to, like, valuing certain species over others.
Yes. Of course.
Okay. Yeah, that's, I mean, I
Yeah,
think
he's not doing the full solipsism meme. He's not going, there's no correlation
Now
between
he seems
complexity of conscious
yeah,
experience and
now it
I don't
seems
know if
like
you
but he's
oh
but
well
he
I
said
don't
I don't know if you're following the conversation, but there was a point in the conversation where I was saying all these things and I said, well, what would you accept? And he said I would accept solving the hard problem of consciousness after I was
yeah, I mean
talking.
I think that was just a miscommunication. I think he was talking about for certainty there, but I don't think it was wrong to think it seems that way. I think that was a reasonable enough inference, but hearing what he's saying, I don't think that that's what he's doing now. I don't think you do either. I don't think that I doubt he was doing it at any point, though it might have seemed like it. I don't think that he's gonna sit there and go, okay, even if you persuade me of like massive behavioral differences and massive differences in neurophysiology that we've correlated with different behaviors and subjective experiences, I'm not convinced there's any difference because who's to think those things have any relation to consciousness? I don't think he's going to do something like that. I think it's just that he doesn't know the empirical facts, and then if you like tell him some of them, then he'll understand that there's a massive gap here.
Yeah, well, that's what I just did. Okay, so I mean,
Yeah, no, I know. I'm not criticizing you. I'm
yeah.
just
I mean, I think I see what you're saying, but it's just the issue is, like, where do we take the precautionary principle with this information?
That's a different discussion. I don't know if I have time for that. That's something like you might be able to talk to Isaac about because that's like,
yeah, that's philosophy stuff.
yeah.
The point is, so wait, to be clear, are you now I mean, obviously you don't know the details of the research, and if that's something that you don't trust Avi to be, surmising accurately, I'm sure you can look into it yourself or seek,
Sure.
cross validation or something. But granted, what he's saying about the neurophysiology is true. You understand that we have a basis for thinking there's like a massive gap in conscious experience, and in fact, I think with many insects, there's not even a clear reason to think they are conscious. Is that the state of the research, Avi?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. My view on the state of the research is it's unclear if they are conscious, but if they are conscious, then I doubt it would be any meaningful degree of consciousness. It would be like some trivial amount or some amount that I'm not sure I would care about.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean, that's fair. It's just I hear different animal rights activists giving different philosophers giving different perspectives. There's philosophers that say it's either on, or consciousness is either on or it's off, or
Well,
and that
wait. Wait. That's compatible with there being a spectrum. There's confusion there. So you can have consciousness either be present or not, and you can also have degrees of complexity of experience. Avi's going to agree that something is either conscious or it's not conscious. He's also going to say that you can have different degrees of complexity or richness of experience was the word that he used.
Okay.
Yeah,
I-
look, you can have just like something. You can have the property of having mass or not having mass, right? Like an object can have a thing can have mass or not have mass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but if something has mass, it could also have different degrees of mass, right?
Yeah, it's true.
So just like you can have mass or not have mass, it's compatible with if you have mass, there's a spectrum of mass that you can have. It's the same sort of thing.
Okay. So it seems like really the only, like, under this view, if I investigate it further and I take it on, which I hope to, because that would be a much healthier view.
We hope
Um,
you do too. That's why I came to this call, because you seem like you're in pain from like this crazy shit. But yeah, sorry, go on.
yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, then it would be like using some biological facts to give perspective on precautionary principle measures.
Well, remember I said there's two steps, right? And again, this is like the reason I came into this call is just because I actually like. Well, first of all, I think people who are committed long-term vegans, it's they have like, if they're like failing to understand something that's like important, then I'm happy to just help generally with that. But it's also like this is a view that I think actually will like cause someone a lot of psychological stress if they actually believe this kind of stuff. So I'm picturing vegans in this like horrible state of like confusion about whether they should like go for a walk outside and risk like stepping on an ant, or whether they should just like commit suicide. And like that is just such an insane place to be that I want to like cure people of that, unless I talk to them and they're just like way too far gone and there's just like no hope. But yeah, it's a
Yeah.
two-part thing. So part one is just, well, really it was I kind of broke part one into three parts. The first was just getting you to kind of agree on like what we mean by value, and that you value things to the degree that they have more rich conscious experiences. And then the second part there was getting you to understand that it is in fact the case that beings have different degrees of conscious experience, different richnesses of conscious experience. But then the last step is just, for whatever things you're concerned about, and this is kind of like an empirical thing, for whatever things you're concerned about, now with those facts in place, they might not even be relevant to this. Actually, that's how funny this is for the empirics. Some of these things will go through even if you thought rats had like human level consciousness. That's like so it's like very over determined to have the kind of view that we're taking here. But the next step is just, for any specific thing you're worried about, like buying corn or whatever, we want to know why you think that suffering or whatever these features are that you don't want to happen to conscious experience, like whatever the bad things are in your view, why you would think there would be more of them in the case that you do the action. And there's also a kind of confusion that people often have here that I want to unwind. I think actually I want Avi to hear this, because I think people often get confused about this. I'm sure you've had to point out this distinction before, but sometimes people get confused about, okay, if I'm thinking about like buying corn or something like this, basically I can either not do the action and run 0 risk, or I can do the action and run like a 50% risk of like killing a bunch of things.
Yeah.
So there, yeah.
Yes. Not action is risk free.
Yeah, so there's a total confusion with that kind of thing. And I'm not saying you're doing this, but this is just so common that it's almost at the level of like checking what someone means by human before letting them answer NTT with human. It's like this particular confusion is so common that I just want to like hedge against it right away. Sometimes people will conflate the kind of thing that Avi and I are talking about with this idea, which is, again, the thing we're talking about is you don't know if there's more suffering if you do A or not A. If you don't do A, there's 0 chance of suffering, and if you do A, there's like you're agnostic about how much suffering there'll be, right? That's like looking at, if I like don't do anything, nothing happens, or I can start like swinging my hand around with a knife in it with my eyes closed, and like maybe I'll cut somebody. It's like, okay, well, that obviously you shouldn't wave your hand like that. But if you have some action and you're not sure whether doing it or not doing it causes more suffering, then agnosticism there is really going to lead you to just like, well, fuck it. Like, I may as well do either because I have no idea what's going to cause more suffering or more of whatever it is I don't like. So yeah, with that in place, let's just go through the list, and this will just be your getting cured of this view. Although I guess maybe you'll have to go and convince yourself of the empirics Avi just ran earlier, but you know,
Yeah,
I'm
and
sure you can do that. And
I just want
yeah,
to say, like, I think it would be really useful, like, if you pointed, like, you had like a list of, I don't know if it's in study archives or whatever, of this topic, because I know I have friends and loved ones that are like literally think they're just perpetually bad people by existing and
yeah,
selfish for
yeah,
existing under this exact same thing that I, you know,
yeah. It's crazy.
this view. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm making a website, and part of that is going to be a big knowledge graph, and it's starting with the debate mechanics stuff, which is all done, by the way. So I just have started adding even more. But yeah, it's going to, in time, have a ton of stuff. I'm going to get Avi to help with empirical stuff, and it's going to have all this stuff on it clearly in nice, like, well-formulated articles that are all linked together non-linearly in a log seek graph. So it's in the works, and we will have this up, and it is worth doing because so many vegans are confused about it, and because being confused about it actually produces like probably significant stress for them, and I would like them to not have that, especially because they're like just trying to do the right thing. Okay, but having said all that, so in terms of clearing up like the empirical details and stuff, that stuff is not going to be up on. I'm not going to have that done anytime soon. So you can just you can ask Avi in his inbox. He answers stuff like this. You can also research on your own, but it's like $1 to get access to that inbox, and the money goes to like vegan studies and stuff. So just you can pay him $1 and you can ask these questions. Okay, so now it's just running down the list. Like, what are the things that you're doing are that you're worrying are evil?
Like,
You just go
so,
one at a time.
yeah, I'll say this, like, driving cars. I accidentally ran over a lizard riding my longboard. Um, playing disc golf, stepping on grass. Um, you
Stepping
know,
on grass.
yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't have the empirics for how many insects that kills, but the worry is still there. And then, and I realize this could be like symptomatic of like some form of like mental illness, but like, I think the philosophical problems with once those get resolved, that would be the step. Realizing that there is no danger is like the biggest step. But also I think driving car, like I've seen bugs splatter on my windshield, things like that.
Yeah,
I,
yeah. So sorry.
I was gonna say also like the occasional act if eventually you might hit a small mammal or something or a deer.
So for you, is it all about locomotion, or is it like also like crop deaths and all that shit?
Um, Honestly, the crop deaths doesn't feel as direct, so it's I mean, I know that's, like, super biased, but it doesn't worry me as much. I know it's there, but it doesn't, like, cause me angst, I guess.
Okay. Um Yeah, so that's fine. So and it basically is just the locomotion stuff that's fucking with you then.
Yeah, seeing direct harm. Yeah.
Yeah, so the idea is just like, why should we think that there's more? I guess we'll just kind of simplify and talk in terms of suffering, but you could probably the same kind of thing will like carry when you add other things that you care about, probably. Why should we think that there's more suffering in the case that you do the driving?
Um, it's not that I think that there's more suffering per se. It's more that um I know that there is some death associated with it.
Yeah, because it's not clear, like, do we have a reason to think that if you take a cubic mile of highway, that the amount of insects killed per hour there would be like higher than if that were just like nature? And they were just like predating each other and eating each other and stuff like that?
Um, I honestly don't know.
Okay, just stop for a second though. If you don't know, then you have no idea whether driving is actually increasing or decreasing suffering.
No, I don't know.
Okay, so
Under yeah, I guess under a utilitarian
well,
perspective,
yeah,
yeah.
but remember what I said also, which is just for simplicity's sake, we'll just talk in terms of utility. If there's something else that you think the point won't carry through for, we can add that, but it's kind of going to carry for like, it's I think a pretty large amount of like possible values a human might have here. The same kind of reasoning of just like, is there a reason to think there's more of the bad thing, whatever exactly there is in the case that you do the action versus the case that you don't do the action? So it's hard when someone's like, well, I have this value set of like A and B and C and D. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I can say that every single time I go through it, but it's just easier to talk in terms of utility and then just point out that it'll generalize to the other things. And then if there's anything you think it's not going to generalize to, we can like talk about that. But it just for simplicity of conversation though.
Okay.
So so yeah, if you don't see a difference there, then why would you worry about doing the action?
Um, it's because I'm unsure whether or not what my views are on utilitarianism. It's up until this point, I kind of done like personal responsibility sort of perspective. Um,
Hmm?
and that's kind of where it stems from. Yeah.
Okay, so to be clear, you're saying on utilitarianism, yeah, there it's just like you would have no worry about this, but you're not sure you're a utilitarian, so you're worrying that there's something that there is asymmetric moral damage in the case that you do drive on the highway or drive at all or walk on grass, whatever, locomote.
Yeah, I would say so. It's I don't know if it would be like I don't know if, it's not really virtue ethics because I've never read any books on virtue ethics, but it is like that idea that like my footprint is the really the only thing that matters.
Well, yeah, I think on virtue ethics, I mean, we don't have to talk about it exactly, but like I don't see on what construal of virtue ethics the guy who's like stressing himself out, really trying to be the best person he can to a point that he's worrying about things that the vast majority of people don't worry about, and he even thinks might read as mental illness, is doing something bad. It's having bad virtue, right? Like, surely if someone else came to you, or when you observe your, like, I'm just closing off the virtue ethics point here. When you observe your, people around you in your family or friend group who also are stressed about this kind of stuff, I mean, surely you view them all as good people with who are trying their best to live virtuously, right?
Yeah,
Like, what?
I tried desperately in the past to convince them that they're good people to no avail.
Yeah, right. But the thing is, like, convincing others, it's because obvious to you they are, but when it's yourself, there's a higher standard. This is like a very common thing, right? Where if someone it's like very often, this is all I think almost always the case, unless you're just really different than me. Almost any time I ever find myself beating myself up over something, if I take a minute to picture someone else coming to me with that problem, I know my reaction would just be like, oh, just calm down. Like, you are totally stressing about nothing here. Like, you're a good person. You mean well. Like, one of my really good friends, her dog died recently. She had like saved this dog. It was in a country where it was like horribly mistreated, and it was like actually hung by its neck and had like a scar around its neck, and it was like deeply like traumatized and stuff, and it would like shiver in fear just on the bus. Like, I felt so I don't think I've ever felt so bad for an animal. Like, I just wanted it to be happy so badly because it just like it looked like it had like PTSD or something. Um but yeah, like she cared so much about this dog. She was always so good to this dog, like to a point of like not being with her friends to take care of the dog even sometimes. And when the dog died, she was beating herself up so hard about the that she wasn't good enough to the dog. And I just had to say to her, like, look, just consider what you would say if someone else came to you with this, right? Like,
Mhm.
you would think it is just so ridiculous. You'd be like, of course you are good to the dog. Like, you put so much effort into the dog. You did everything you possibly could for them, right? But like, how could you even think something like that? But when it's you under the microscope, you're 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 so critical, right? So yeah, I think it's important to just notice that asymmetry there, that like we often hold ourselves to like totally insane standards that we would like never hold anyone else to if they came to us with the exact same thing. So yeah, as far as virtue ethics goes, if there's any character virtue you're like failing on, it's probably like not caring about yourself and your own happiness enough, and like focusing too much on some of this shit. So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I absolutely think it's unhealthy. Like I um am very self-aware about like this is causing me harm, but it's like, and it's not that I think that I'm worse than other people. I actually think I'm better in terms of like not causing harm than a lot. I would even say most people.
Hmm.
It's just uh under this view that I got myself under this idea of like anti-speciesism to a point where we are dismissing, you know, or not dismissing, but I mean, I'm just unaware of the neuroscientific, evidence. But like, so with no neuroscientific evidence, treating all creatures with brains as equal, it just felt like I could literally never do enough to make my life more valuable than the lives I was taking because it
Well,
was
I mean, yeah, like,
multiple insects or whatever.
well, keep in mind, say that your life was resulting in. So I do understand if you had a view that like my life is equal to all other lives, and if I stay alive, then 10 people die, and if I die, then they don't. Then it's like, yeah, you might want to die. I can understand that,
Exactly.
but two things, right? Firstly, big consciousness gap is one thing,
Mhm.
but the other is that's like the doing nothing versus swinging a knife around with your eyes closed thing, right? Which I hedged against at the very start. Say that the case is if you live, 10 people die, and if you die, 10 people die, or you whatever number it is, there is some number that is greater than one that die whether you live or die. It's like, well, then there's no reason to be thinking about killing yourself anymore, right? Because it's not clear that it has any impact on the thing that you would be hoping to resolve by killing yourself, right? You have
Yeah, I
to
mean,
consider the counterfactual where you die and ask if things are actually better in it.
that makes intuitive sense. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, okay. So again, just back to the same thing with like the driving. So we understand on utilitarian grounds, there's not really any difference here. We understand that you're not, by any reasonable model of virtue ethics, you're not having a fucking failure of personal virtue here. So like, just what is the thing that's supposed to be asymmetric here between the case of locomoting or not?
Um, I don't. I mean, like I said, I think you're making the case that there's no reason, there's no evidence to suggest that um my behavior is causing any excess harm. Um, I think that's a fair perspective. Um, especially if it is true what Avi said with the spectrum of like consciousness and like whether or not they even possess things that I value in a conscious individual.
Though that just over determines it. I think even without running that, you're still gonna get to this conclusion. That just like is like the 80th nail in the coffin or something.
Yeah.
Right. So if you can't think of anything morally valuable that's asymmetrically affected by locomoting or not, you should step on all the grass you want to.
Yeah, the only rebuttal I have for that is like I know it's probably not a great rebuttal, but it's like, oh, I'm still, however brief, I'm still like shortening their life by a little bit. But
Is there a reason to think that their lives are shorter in the case that you locomote than that you don't?
well, so if I step on a bug and or I don't, let's say there's a moment where I could step on the bug or I don't step on the bug. If I step on the bug, there will be at least be a moment after that. If I don't step on the bug, there'll at least be a moment after that that it survives longer.
Yeah, for that bug, yes. But the point, like overall bugs in general, like if you don't step on that bug can kill and eat another bug, right?
That's
Right.
true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
So like there may be a shortening of bug lives overall if you don't step on it.
For the record, I would have said that, but I don't mind you stepping in, obviously.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So it might take a while because if you've been in this like crazy view for a long time, then you might just keep defaulting back into it. But you just have to, when you do that, just take the harm in question and then consider whether there's again, just apply the reasoning we've walked through here. And if you can't remember it, then just ask about it in my messages or in Obvious. But just apply the same reasoning and see if it diffuses that case. And then by just doing that iteratively, at some point it's just going to become intuitive to you, right? Like that it's just not clear that there's anything bad happening.
Mm. Yeah, I mean
This is one thing
that
to get
good
led
antidote.
there intellectually and to be like, okay, I think I'm there. But it's another to feel there, right? Like you can get there and be like, okay, that all made sense. I still kind of feel the same way. But then that's just inertia, right? Like that's like the inertia of being in a crazy moral view. Like you just apply the concepts whenever the moral view rises and see if they diffuse it. You don't force them to or anything like this. You just consider them honestly and see if it breaks the concern. And by just doing that iteratively, if the view is wrong, it will start falling apart and it'll start becoming intuitive to you that actually that's all just crazy. And then you can go cure other people of this craziness.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think what I'm gonna do after this call is go drive to the park and hang out for a bit. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, go sit on the grass.
Yeah.
I'm just
Well,
teasing. It's fun. Yeah.
yeah, no, I appreciate your time. This was I think what you said made sense. I do want to look more into the neuroscience. I think that would really
Sure.
solidify um, you know, the view.
Yeah, well, that stuff is a lot more concrete than the philosophy. So, I mean, philosophy is abstract and shit. If you want the neuroscientific evidence, it's that stuff's going to be like straightforward. You just have to grind through it. Anyway,
Mhm.
it was nice talking to you though, and enjoy your time at the park.
Will do. All right, take care. All right, bye.